Does a delayed exit from the work life lead to a swift entrance into the afterlife? Find out today on the Void of Intelligence. Welcome back into the Void. Today we talk about retirement. Is it purgatory? Is it one step closer to the grave? First of all, let's talk about purgatory. Is it punishment? Is it purification? For that, we have to go back into the dictionary and also one's interpretation of what purgatory is. Purgatory is that space between one place and another, and religion is that spot between death and the afterlife. For some, it's seen as punishment. For some, it seems as a time for purification in order to get to that next level or that next life. But what happens when people retire? Why do people retire? What incentive do people have to retire? Well, it all comes back down to mortality. Mortality refers to the state of being mortal or destined to die. Anytime you see statistics where one talks about high mortality, that's a bad thing because a high level of mortality means the more mortal you are and more likely to die. Lower mortality is good. The lower one's mortality is, they have a better chance of living for a longer period of time. Let's look at some stats. Mortality based on retirement. But before we get into that, here's an example of what mortality is in a world sense. So as of 2022 in the World Population Review, about an average of 7.2 per 1,000. In the US, 8.7 or about 898 deaths per 100,000 people. The most is Bulgaria, and they're at about 15.4, which is about 1,791 deaths per 100,000 people. The least is Qatar. Qatar has the lowest mortality rate in the world, about 1.2 deaths per 1,000 people. It's about 154 per 100,000. This low mortality rate can be attributed to Qatar's improved healthcare system, which is renowned for its technology, advanced facilities, and ability to deliver some of the world's best patient care. Now, we're talking about one of the richest countries in the world now. And when we refer to non-communicable diseases, which is diseases of the circulatory, the digestive, respiratory system, and cancers. So, with that being said, a better healthcare system will lead to longer lifespans, and a better healthcare system could be attributed to the wealth of one country over another. So, in comparison to the countries that we looked at, Qatar, Bulgaria, United States, wealthy versus poor, white collar versus blue collar, wages, work, they're all linked together. The bottom line is, in some instances, money can keep you alive, not just from the healthcare standpoint, but also from the part of life, or we can also say the quality of life that one has once they retire. So that can also be an incentive why people that work more tend to have more money, more spendable and disposable income, and therefore have better lives or more fulfilled lives, or the ability to do things while they work and then after they retire, because most people are on a fixed income after retirement. For those that have worked and put aside money in a 401k or have to wait for something like Social Security to kick in. So, early retirement versus traditional retirement and age. On September 28, 2021, Vince Foss of the Philadelphia Tribune wrote an article entitled Tips to be Fit. Early retirement may lead to earlier death. In a study of Shell oil employees, it was found that people that retired at 55 and lived to be 65 died 37% sooner than those that retired at the age of 65. They also found that people who retired at age 55 were 89% more likely to die within 10 years than those that retired at 65. Social Security data noted the trend as well. Men that retired at 62 had a 20% higher likelihood of death than the general population. End quote. Now we're going to cross-reference that according to the National Library of Medicine in May 2020. Early retirement was not associated with a high risk of mortality. On time retirement was associated with a high risk of mortality, which might reflect the healthy worker effect. It is important to consider information on prior health and demographics when studying the association between retirement and mortality to avoid biased findings. Right? Let's go back to Vince Foss. Working longer seems to reduce the likelihood of earlier death. Healthy workers that continued to work until they were 66 and had an 11% reduced mortality risk. Even retirees with health conditions that worked until they were 66 still had a 9% reduced mortality risk. These studies are not implying that you will die soon after you retire. If you retire at 65, you have a 76% chance of living 10 or more years, a 38% chance of living 20 or more years, and a 5% chance of living another 30 years. The life expectancy for men in the United States is 78.54 years as of that article. Women tend to live longer than men generally and have a life expectancy of 81.1 years. That topic is for another day. Not everyone will die soon after retirement. Okay. Alice Zolkarian and Matthew S. Rutledge of the Center of Retirement Research at Boston College in 2018 found that older Americans have been retiring later for a number of reasons, including jobs that become less physically demanding and the shift from defined benefit to defined contribution pensions and changes in Social Security incentives. So it seems like a lot of the things that we're talking about are based upon income, and it's based upon the type of job that you have, and it's based upon the amount of money put aside or the life that you will live afterwards monetarily. Let's go to Social Security. Social Security looks at 62 as the early retirement age, and that's at a 30% deficit of the standard. So for those that take out Social Security at its earliest at 62, are going to be able to draw at a 30% deficit of the standard age, which is 66. Full retirement of that age if you were born from 1943 to 1954. The full retirement age increases gradually if you were born from 1955 to 1960 until it reaches the age of 67, which is full retirement benefits. For anyone born after 1960, their full retirement benefits are payable at the age of 67. Now note that we're talking about age and not years of employment. Some people may have been in the workforce longer. So when we talk about things like that, it doesn't matter how long that you've worked. Social Security recognizes retirement at 67 years old. Let's go back to the Boston College report. Working longer is associated with lower mortality, depression, and diabetes risk for both men and women in ordinary linear regression models. Delayed retirement reduces the 5-year mortality rate for men's ages 62 to 65 by 2.4%, or a 32% reduction relative to non-workers. That's about 3 months relative to the length that someone lives. Policies that delay retirement may increase longevity, especially for men, but have no deductible effect on depression or diabetes during one's 60s. As they considered policies that could lengthen careers, policymakers could take into account the possibility that lives may also be extended and consider the potential effects on the benefits paid out. These work hand in hand. Age range is a good factor for retirement, but it is really hard to pinpoint or have a really good gauge in things due to factors such as employment length, whether at one job or multiple jobs in one's career, stressful work environment, predisposition to disease or hereditary issues, contracting sickness from your profession, employment forcing a person into early retirement, diabetes, and pandemic. So a lot of these things are things that are out of one's control for the most part. Now, let's talk about purpose or the lack of purpose. I think sometimes mortality rate in those that retire versus those that work longer seems to me that when there's a lack of purpose, either nothing to do or nothing of importance to do, then that mortality risk seems to increase. And that can be tied with retirement, especially if there's no plan after retirement on what to do during this after work life. Reaching the summit. I mean, you've reached the top of your game. Now there's nothing to do, nothing else to conquer. But what happens after you climb Mount Everest? You have to come down. It's not really that exciting. There's no adrenaline rush. And for some, losing that high on a daily basis equals losing that motivation, which also leads to a level of depression, a level of feeling that there's a lack of purpose, and a level of feeling that there's not much more left to conquer. Social life. I know sometimes people lost a lot fighting to get to the top. And once you're done doing you, there's no one left to enjoy it with. It's funny how sometimes we can't see the forest from the trees. Here's an even more devastating concept. It might be that your circle changes once you're out of the rat race. Your acquaintances naturally change because you're not running with the herd anymore. And that realization can be a blow because you had a herd prior to being your career person. You've gained a new herd trying to ascend to the top of your game while losing the old herd that you had. And then once you stop running with the herd, you're at the top of your game, you've retired. And now those people might still be working. And at that point, it's kind of hard because now you're not running the same race anymore. And if for those things and those people that you used to run with, now it's pretty much everything's going in reverse. So you've lost the desire, you've lost the ability, and you've lost purpose. But here are things to remember: having a work life balance. Work just as hard at maintaining and knowing the difference between work, social, and family circles. Figure out a way to balance that. I find that people try harder to blend the three than maintain and nurture them in their own special way. Because we're multitaskers, because we want to be able to do all the things that we want to do at one time, we want to blend these three things. We want to blend our work circle, we want to blend our social circle, and we want to blend our family circles. Sometimes, in some cases, that do work, but in most cases, they don't. Because if that's the case, there would be one circle. You would be able to work with your family and get along at the same time if work, social, and family circles do exist, correct? But here's the thing, and we're going to work from the inside out. Family is forever. Friends give you a bridge into the real world. Work acquaintances help you succeed in your profession. These three circles do overlap, but in the order they come into your life, they oftentimes leave in reverse. You use your family to get to that point where you have confidence to build relationships, and in most cases, those relationships become work acquaintances or work relationships where they help you achieve your goals. Family, friends, work. Then work, friends, family. Up the hill, down the hill. So, like we said, these three circles do overlap, but in the order that they come in, and they will oftentimes leave in reverse, with your work going, then your friends, and then ultimately you're left with your family. That's why we may see in cases that the earlier someone retires, they don't live as long. Perhaps running at such a high level creates burnout. There may have been extreme sacrifices to get to the top, including family and friends. And now there's no one left. That's why we may see in cases that the later that someone retires, they live a little longer. Their work was their lifeblood, it was their purpose, they had a reason to wake up in the morning. But the truth is, all of these examples apply to both circumstances. Unless you die on the job, and I'm assuming there's a report of that which will bridge the gap in statistics and account for subjects who don't apply to either category. People retire when they are done with that phase of their lives. If their entire life is their work, they probably won't last long unless they have maintained good relationships with their friends and families. Some people are never done in their profession, so they never quit until they are physically incapable of fulfilling the requirements of their job. They are still going to die. Those people just have lived longer. Whether I work until I'm 60 or work until I'm 70, if I live to be 71 in both lives, one could look at those stats and say retirement gave me life or ultimately killed me. One can say that I got to enjoy a lengthy life after retirement in one scenario, and in comparison to the other, a shorter one. That's why we say sometimes there are benefits to working longer. Sometimes there's a less level of strenuousness to your job. Your job has become easier, or you gotten to that level in the company or wherever you're working at where you don't have to do as much to accomplish the same thing. Or you have been placed in another position where your brain is more valuable to the company than your strength and your brawn. So in that cases, yes, you can work longer. In other cases, you can't if it's a blue collar job. When you draw your last breath, I think the main goal is to fulfill your purpose. If it's your job, you probably aren't retiring early, and there is nothing wrong with that. And most workaholics work until they can't anymore. Experience does go a long way in the workforce, and it helps a work environment grow when used correctly. For those that retire early, they may see their purpose is their life as a whole, and work is just one aspect. That ability to compartmentalize is a rare trait that allows people to rocket to the top of a profession and then get out. Their sacrifice was planned in order to provide a life of financial freedom or a stress free period of life after retirement. We haven't even factored in non traditional professions like the military, where their life's work is protecting others, or on a smaller scale, our police force, where there are reasons for leaving or staying, and they may have a drastic impact on others based upon the job that they do. Regardless of the route you take to retirement and the work afterlife, hopefully all of us get to enjoy the fruits of our labor while we can still taste them. As long as you have friends, family, a purpose, clean bill of health, and a will to live, you should be all right. Thank you for joining me once again today on The Void of Intelligence. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you next time.